Hello, everyone. So I call this series When Calls the Hearties. I put a call out for the Hearties. And I thought Monday nights, to keep up the momentum, I can't even talk, we would chat and talk about all the things that we love, but I wanted to hear from the Hearties. So you're my guest. I'm going to interview you, Brian. Are you ready?
I am ready.
I
Hello,
know.
everybody.
Hi. Brian has been on before. Brian, when you came on, what were we talking about? Of course, we slipped in When Calls
We,
the
we
Heart,
did
but
a we did a review of Big Sky River with
yes, I thought so.
cattle. Mhm.
Yes, which was good, and then they went on to make a second part, and I liked it. I liked it. I
I
thought they
did
did.
too.
Yeah,
I thought it was, I probably liked it as much as the first one,
me
probably.
too. I was
Mhm.
happy about it. I wanna just while we're waiting for people to pop in, I just think it's cool when we get to see people from all over. Anna's from Australia. How about that?
All right.
And
Hello, Anne.
Kathy, okay, I don't know where Kathy is from because she's saying good morning. So, she's somewhere not here. Brian, now where are you again?
I'm in Lake Havasu City, Arizona.
I thought it was Arizona.
Mhm. We're
Oh,
right on the California Arizona border.
okay. Do you go into California?
Well, I was born and raised in Southern California, so I go over there a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. You still have family there?
Vacation. My brother lives in Northern California, but we vacation together in
Mm, nice.
Southern California where we
Now,
grew
my
up.
family is all from the East Coast, Jersey, Philly, like South Jersey, Hamilton, and Philly. And but I do have family out in California. They moved out
Mhm.
there many, many years ago. Right out went out when my uncle graduated from college, and they have a whole business out there and their kids, and so it's fun because we get to go there. And for a while, my dad was bi-coastal. He lived there for part of the year here, and it was fun. It was fun, fun, fun to visit. I don't know that
Yeah.
I could live there though. All right.
Well, my family, I've lived in the West my whole life, but my
Okay.
both my parents are from Ohio,
Oh,
and they they moved out west, to Arizona, and actually they moved out separately, but they happened to meet in Phoenix, and then they got married, and then moved to Santa Monica, where we lived, where most of us were born in my family.
so you're out there. So
Yep.
for us, for me, it is 8 o'clock. What is it for you?
It is 5 o'clock.
Oh, wow. You gave up your dinner time for us, Brian. You're the best. Catherine is from Arizona. She's saying, hey.
Hey, Catherine.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So before we get started, I wanted to know how you became a Hardy.
Well, I was before When Calls the Heart started on Hallmark, I was, a regular viewer of the network, enjoyed their movies. And, so when they developed the new series, they did promote it in advance. And I could tell from the previews that the style of the program was going to be right up my alley, so
Me too. Yeah.
I was there, for the first episode. I did miss the pilot movie somehow or another, but I was there for the first episode, and I'm pretty sure I've watched every episode live for all 10 seasons. I've become that big of a fan of the series.
Wow. I think I have too, except no, I'm not telling the truth. There's only one that I didn't because I didn't know if I could, and it took me a long time to watch it. And that's the one where we know that Jack has died, and they're doing the whole like service, and I thought that was beautifully done how they did it back, like she would have like a flashback in a memory, and I couldn't. It took me a long time to watch that. I think that's the only one that so we're true Hardys, aren't we?
We are, and a lot of people have shared that story that they knew that was coming, probably because they were active on social media.
Yeah.
At the time during season 5, I was not, so I was, you know, completely ambushed by that, as a viewer, and yeah, that was tough. It really was. Yeah.
Now, the only social
Beautifully
media
done. But yeah, it was a gut punch.
were you on Facebook on at that time or no?
I was on Facebook, and I read stories on, but you know I wasn't part of groups and stuff where
Yeah,
we
neither was
discussed
I.
the show. And yeah.
Yeah. I didn't join any groups or anything until I didn't even really know they existed until guess it was after season 8. I think that might have been the one. And I saw things, so I was like, "Oh, wow," and started joining different things.
Well, same with me. I joined Twitter after season 8, and of course, shortly after I joined, I thought to myself, what have I got myself into? Because back then it was, the social media was kind of in a meltdown,
Yeah.
because of the storyline. But
Have you ever been to a Hardy family reunion?
nope, I would love to, and I know a lot of my social media fans like Lillian
Yeah. Carrie, they've been
and
there.
other, right, and Pia and Carolyn and others, went this last time. So yeah, I would love to.
You'll get there. You're gonna go. You'll get there. Now, is there anybody
Well,
in your family that is a Hardy along with you, or are you watching this by yourself?
I, on and off, my sister and my nieces are very fond of the show.
Oh, okay.
They took a little bit of a break after season 8. They were big Nathan fans, and they weren't necessarily angry, but they kind of stepped away from the show for a while.
Sure.
My girlfriend at the time was the same way, and that was kind of tough because I'm not a casual fan. I love the
Yes.
show, so
Sure. Yes.
it was difficult for me to say, okay, well, you know, but it's like the fans, I respect that, and but I'm still gung ho about the show,
Yeah.
regardless of how the storylines change.
We're gonna get there though. Don't talk about that yet. Let's go in order of like before. So, okay, in the very beginning, give me some of your favorites, like favorite. Well, actually, that wouldn't be a beginning. I would like to know in general, like, what's your favorite season? Do you have a favorite season or pieces of
Well,
seasons?
I think you asked Nikki last week,
Yes.
and my answer was it was a toss up between season 3 and season 7.
Okay.
Um, they were a little bit different, of course I love all of the seasons. A couple a little less so than others, but I picked those because season 3 started the 2 years as Robin Bernheim as showrunner, and I think that you know, there was more of an emphasis in season 3 and season 4 to the classroom scenes with
Yes. Yes.
Elizabeth and young children, and they involved those kids into the main storylines of the
Hmm.
season. And I've always thought that that was Elizabeth's biggest strength as a character on there.
Yes.
And I love the kids, so you know to me both of those seasons were really strong, season 3 and season 4. um, when she left and they changed showrunners for season 5 when Alfonso came in, I think in season 5 he kind of continued that, but I think that one thing that changed is that by then Daniel knew or wanted to leave the show,
Yes.
and I don't want to be unfair to him, but I kind of had the feeling watching season 5 that he had one foot out the door. There
Yes.
was he wasn't the character wasn't didn't seem quite as involved in the story
Mm.
as he had been in the previous 4 seasons on there but but so 3, I think, when I look back at the individual episodes in the season, I think season 3 might be my favorite, but it's close. season 7, the show changed quite a bit by then. Um, with the departure of Daniel and Lori Laughlin,
Mm-hmm.
it became a little bit more of an ensemble show then, the with the other new characters. But I thought that Alfonso did a brilliant job of balancing everything
Yes.
in season 7. He gave great storylines to all of the characters, and they still were involving the kids quite a bit. Um, Unfortunately, that changed, in season 8 and 9 because of the pandemic.
Yes.
They were more limited, and I think that, at least for me, that was kind of a negative for both season 8 and season 9. Was there was less scenes with Elizabeth in her classroom with her students.
Yes.
And of course, season 8, was the pinnacle of the triangle storyline. So that was going to be a
Mhm.
big emphasis, anyways.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
I remember we'd see them walking outside talking to each other. I remember there was a scene with Bill and Molly, and they're literally shouting across to each other in the road about going to have coffee or something like that. Actually having a
mhm,
conversation, which was funny. It was supposed to be like he was going one way, she was going the other, but it was because
right,
they had to stay away from each other. But they did a really good job. And one of the things that I loved is that they were so careful that nobody came down with COVID when they did it. Like they filmed without any incidents. I forget like for how many weeks and months, which was kudos to them. So, and we
mhm,
still got our When Calls the Heart. We still got it, which was
right,
nice. Yeah, it was
right.
nice. Now, do you have a favorite character or characters?
Well, I think that people who know me on social media know I'm a big fan of Nathan and Allie,
Yep.
obviously. But I, as a kind of a rare, and actually I don't know how rare it is. I think there's a lot of men that are fans of the show, but
Yes.
most of them are not active on social media.
Yes, they're
A
just on
lot of
TV.
them will watch with their girlfriends or their spouses, and they're
Mm-hmm.
kind of closet fans.
Oh,
Um, but but I'm not. I love the show, and I'll shout it on the rooftops, and but but yeah, I think that in terms of favorite characters, I relate a lot to the Nathan and his relationship with his niece. I don't have kids of my own, but I kind of was a surrogate parent to my sister's two daughters, and so I had a very close relationship with my niece. So I kind of identify a lot with Nathan that way. So you know that's part of the reason why he's been a favorite character of mine. Um, but on the other hand, from a male perspective, I really love the female characters. I've always loved Elizabeth, and
sure.
the Rosemary. Um, when Fiona or when Kayla joined the show, she became a favorite of mine. She's very spunky, and
Mm-hmm.
I love her personality.
Yeah.
So so it's pretty well rounded. And the um, with the other male characters, I like almost all of them. The um, Cavan is another one of my favorites. And we just discussed earlier during the review of his movies. And I like him as an actor, but I also like Lee as a character.
Yeah.
And I think that as a man, the marriage between him and Rosemary on the show, I kind of see him as a good role model,
He
in
is.
terms of, okay, well, you know, Lee is, kind of the poster boy for, being a good husband.
Yeah.
That's my perspective.
Yeah.
So I appreciate his character a lot. I um, and of course, I I've always liked Lucas too. He's kind of the, and of course I never kind of fell into the the trap of the teams. I think that
Yeah.
both characters are unique, and they both bring a lot of great things to the show.
Yeah.
And I've often commented on social media that when Daniel left, and they were kind of left in a tough spot there, but they really struck gold when they were able to sign both Chris and Kevin,
Yes.
to
Yes.
the show. And those characters, you know, unfortunately, Lori, the thing with Lori happened in season 6, but even with that, they really didn't miss a beat. You
They
know,
didn't. It's funny because it saved them. It saved the show. It did.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
it did. Yeah,
it did. I wanted to share what some of your our fans here are saying. Our Hearties are saying this is CW 1115. It says outside of Nathan, I love Henry and his redemption arc.
yeah, I agree. And I think from a if I put on my critic's hat, I Martin is probably the most skilled actor on the show. I think that his
Oh my
portrayal
gosh.
of Henry is this. It's like an acting class.
It
Watching him as
He's
Henry.
amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
he is. Yeah,
Mhm. And he doesn't give anyone an interview. Not even the official Hearties. He gives
yeah. I
no.
was I was I was surprised they released some of the cast portraits for
Yeah.
season 11 a week
Uh-huh.
or two ago. And there was actually one of Martin as Henry, and I was amazed that he even consented to do that.
Yeah,
But
I know. He's not a he, but although he goes on his own social media account, but he's like such a
right,
family man, and he doesn't give anyone an interview. Anyone. I'm like, that's all right. We love you. We love you.
right.
He is phenomenal though. Um, let's see. I wanted to see what other people were thinking who was their favorite character. Let's see who we have here. There's many people, but I'll go with the start thing here. Let's
Well,
see.
I know who Lillian's favorite actor is.
Yes, Christina
Or
says
character.
Lucas is my all-time favorite, and she loves Lee. And SKOO, I'm not sure who that is, says she loves or he loves, I'm not sure, or they love Faith. I do too. And did you notice? I don't know if you follow Andrea on social media. She always has cute stuff up. Do you follow her on social media, Brian, or no?
I do.
Did you
I
see
do.
not too long ago she posted that forget how she worded it, but we were kind of like in for a surprise for her this year. Like the way she worded it. And then I saw her hugging a little kiddo, and then the storyline was saying something about them opening up, which I had
Mhm,
predicted about a season ago that they were going to open up a daycare in town. And I'm
mhm.
wondering if she'll be like an Abigail story. Maybe she'll adopt a child because
I
it's a
I
little
hope
boy.
so.
Yes, and that would
And
just
the young actress that they casted is I for those who watch Kevin McGarry's Christmas hockey movie,
yes.
she's the cute young girl that's in that movie on there
Love
as
it.
that new character.
All
And
right.
but I think that when we get to the point in this when we talk about what we're looking forward to or hoping
Yes.
for season 11, that would be pretty high on my list. I think that would be a great storyline.
I know. I'm waiting. I love Andrea. I love, and this isn't about me, but it's always about me. And I really enjoy Faith, her character. I liked her from the first time I met her, and she always had some spunk. And she was a raised. I think she's the characters, her and brothers. You know what I mean? And I
Mhm,
thought maybe it would be fun if we got to see maybe some of her nieces or something. And I'm thinking, I wonder where this is going. So I'm excited for it
mhm,
too.
yeah.
Let's see. CW 1115 says Nathan and Henry. Second, Lillian says Lucas. Oh, I like this. Catherine says you gotta love Florence.
Oh
You,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
I
Well,
really
that
enjoy.
that's all of them. The cast is just uniformly great.
Yeah,
You know the main lead characters and also all of the recurring characters. they've just become so integral to the show.
Yeah, it's true. Kathy said that she likes, I liked Pastor Frank. Now, Kathy, who hosts with me, which she's no longer co-hosting with me for When Calls the Heart, but she does co-host other things. She loves Pastor Frank, loves him. What's Jean saying? I would love for Carson to come back and be with Faith. Oh goodness, we're not getting into all of that, are we? Jean, you could come on our show and share your ideas. I would love that. Come on our show. Oop. Martha says Hickam and Lucas. Yeah. Okay. And Jennifer loves Nathan and Allie just like you do. Yep. Okay. All right. Now, through the years, we know what your favorite seasons are, but is there a storyline that really like touched your heart? Like it was a storyline that you felt powerful or had a wonderful message or just you liked it because you liked it.
Well, I there's several,
All right.
and
I'm eager.
one of them was kind of revisited in season 10 with the Rosaline character. Um,
Yes.
if you go back to the first season,
Yep.
I think the title of the episode was "The Telling Silence."
Yep.
You know the where she was missing. That was a gripping episode. That was
Yes, it
really
was.
well written, well acted.
Mhm.
You know, but that one was kind of an emotional peak. But in a general way, the storylines that I've liked the most on the show are the community based stories.
Mhm.
Where the community rallies. In that episode, they all rallied. The search for Rosaline. Who was missing. But anything where the community unites and works together. We even saw some of that in last season. Where the leaders of Hope Valley worked together to save the town. And of course, Lucas was the primary person that stepped up. But
Mhm.
those type of stories where the characters unite and become a community and look out for each other, help each other. Those to me are the best stories, the one that resonates the most with me. And I think that's true with a lot of viewers as well.
Yes, I agree. I loved seeing the men together and they were funny, and how they were all taken
Mhm.
apart and trying to, get together. I hope we see more of that. I really
Yeah.
do. Do you how what are your feelings about the whole Henry like transformation from season 1 all the way to last year? What do you think?
Well, he was a very effective villain in the early seasons.
Mm,
He was kind of a character that you love to hate. You know,
yes. Mhm.
he it was a thing that you obviously you were rooting against him, but you were kind of doing that while at the same time kind of admiring the character a little bit.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
it was a bit of a contradiction, watching that, but I love that they've allowed his character, to to kind of evolve that way,
Mhm.
you know, where he's learned, a lot of hard lessons in his life, and and he's genuinely wanted to change,
Yes.
and I think that it's that's a great story.
It
It's
is.
we and of course the because of the emotional range that Martin gives to Henry, it's so believable that it really the story is good on its own, and they're usually the scripts are well written, but he just personifies it in such a way that it just it hooks
Yeah,
the audience.
he did. And one of the most powerful scenes, like that it's a favorite of mine, just the scene in general, not just because it's not about Henry, is the scene when he says to, um why is his name out of my head? Oh my gosh, Pastor. When he says to why can't Joseph, my goodness, is this okay? And he gets down on his knees to pray. Like,
Mhm.
and just, I was like, oh my gosh, that whole episode was, oh my gosh. And then that was amazing. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. Um, this is Gladys. This always sticks in my head too. And I think it might be because I'm a teacher, but I loved when there were the boys, the father didn't believe that his son even needed to know how to read. He was going to be sort of like a manual laborer anyway. But here, the reason why he couldn't read had to do with almost like is probably like dyslexic back then. They wouldn't have said that. And she made it was tactile learner, and she made all the letters out of the dough for him. I remember that. That
Mhm.
was a good
Nope,
one.
that was a great episode. And hi Gladys. That's my grandmother's name, by the way.
Aw,
Uh,
that's
yeah, that was a great that and that kind of ties into what I was earlier. The those first few years, so many great scenes like that. You know,
yes.
as Elizabeth, the teacher, with her students. And
Mm-hmm.
you know, being their teacher, their advocate. Their you know good stuff.
I remember when there was a father, I forget his name. He was a single dad. He had to go away overnight. So she said she'd stay at their house, and I remember Jack being like, "Oh yeah," with his little smirk on his face. Okay. And she would like take care of them, and it was just funny how they worked together as a team. So they worked the children into like other storylines, which was really nice.
Right.
What was this? Lucy saying, I love that scene with Henry and the pastor. It made me cry. It makes me cry too. Yes. Yep.
Mhm.
And Jean was like, yes, when Henry got down on his knees to pray with Joseph, really hit my heart. I know. And Lillian saying it was exceptional. Yeah, I agree.
Then a another scene with Henry, which is a favorite of mine. That's kind of a on the other end of the emotional
Mm-hmm.
spectrum was the Christmas special with the young orphan girl. When he was
Mm-hmm.
you know the young orphan girl. I guess Henry reminded her and her sister of their father,
Yeah.
who had and so they were drawn to him, but Henry was so tender with those young girls
He
on there,
was.
and that was really a beautiful story the way that was told. And obviously it showed the audience a different side of Henry on there, but from an acting point, again, it shows that Martin's range, in
Yes.
playing Henry, how he can do both of those. He can play the bad guy, he can play the tender-hearted, you
Yes.
know, with the children, and
Yep.
and then the real deeply personal confessional type scenes, like in the Mounties
Yeah.
office with Joseph. Yep.
Yeah. You have people whenever anyone agrees with any of us, we always have to say you're that this is our new best friend. So Jean saying yes, that Christmas episode was wonderful, and Robin saying yes, that was a beautiful scene. Um, oh, this is true. You are correct. Also, a subsequent Christmas episode when Henry gives his coat to the young salesman who got sick. Remember that?
Right.
Yes, yes,
Yep. Hmm.
yes. And Martin deserves an Emmy.
Yep.
Um,
Well, he does. He does.
yeah.
And you know, and I think that there's been seasons that I think that Aaron, you know,
Yes. That
you know,
scene where she cried.
look at season 5. That the episode, where
I can hear it.
that's
I hear her when she gets down. She's a good crier. She's an excellent actress.
Mhm.
And
Right.
I mean, wow. Catherine saying in one of the early episodes, I liked it when all the women in town showed up in church wearing red. They were under the influence of Rosemary.
Mhm.
Robin, you are correct. There was been some amazing children actors on the show too. Do you remember the little girl who was kind of snobby and bratty and she was mean to everyone, but here she had lost her best friend and that's why her
Mhm.
heart was hurt and she was afraid to make friends. That I loved her too. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Um oh, Carson gave his coat. Henry, okay, Carson, I was thinking that. Carson gave his coat or was it a scarf?
Yeah, Carson did, but Henry, um,
He gave
I
him
think,
something and he took them. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I think he drove him out to
Mhm.
his
Next
vehicle.
destination.
So
And
yeah, that in that particular Christmas special, I think that there were some great scenes shared between Carson, Henry, and that traveling salesperson.
yes.
That became ill, that was selling the brushes and the
Yep. And
right.
and he puts the mustard in Henry's coat. He gets the mustard in Henry's coat when
Mhm.
he's trying to brush it off. But Henry also um like said he'll help him with it, like get a job, and he knows people in the city.
Right.
And that young actor has stayed with people. We had him on as for that season,
Mhm.
and we chatted and we told him how much
Right.
we
Right.
remember that character. Yeah. Yes,
Right.
the spare tire, that's it, that's it, that's
Right.
it, that's it, yeah. That's what it
And
was.
that's when it comes to when you any discussion about favorite episodes, you I normally you think about the linear episodes during the seasons,
Yeah,
but the reality is the Christmas specials have always been my favorite. Of the if they were considered a standalone episode, they would
right.
be my favorites. They were just so well done.
One
I,
was a New
that's
Year's Eve.
something that I've really missed the last few seasons is not having those.
I guess it's like Christmas one or 2 more episodes. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mhm.
the 2 more episodes, which really carry
Yeah,
out
but
the whole.
I'm greedy. I want the that and two more episodes. So
Yes, 13. We want 12 and then the Christmas one, right? I do too. I agree with
yep.
that. I'm for that. I think we all are for that. What is something that you are looking forward to or what you hope or we getting some cool promos. So what are some things you're looking forward to seeing in season 11? Can you imagine it's season 11?
Well, we mentioned one already with the
Mhm.
possible storyline for Faith on
Right,
there.
right.
Um, I'm very interested in Lucas's story, which I based on some of the rumors and things that I've heard.
The
There's
promos. Yeah.
right. They're obviously they're going to show him, you know, in his new role as governor, but also
Mhm.
there's going to be a kind of a deep dive into his history, and I think that they're going to be bringing in some characters that you know will kind of answer a lot of questions about his you know Lucas's history before he came to Hope Valley, and I think that that's going to be a really interesting storyline.
Mhm.
That's another storyline that I'm looking forward to a lot in for season 11. Um, I'm one that enjoyed the new relationship between Hickam and May Sue in season 10, and I'm anxious to see where that goes in season 11. Um, the Obviously Henry, we know where that left off. I don't think that I think it's already been confirmed that Lori will not be back for season 11. So we probably won't be seeing that happen. But where will Henry go now that his he's kind of reached a point where he seems more fully redeemed and kind
Mhm.
of ready to for the next phase in there. So that to me will be another interesting storyline. And obviously, as a Nathan fan, I am looking forward to that storyline, and not just the romance between the characters, but you know one thing that going back to the earlier season, when they were competing, for Elizabeth's attention.
Yeah, yeah.
One thing that I thought was enticing was the prospect of a blended, family.
Family.
And I don't want to get too far ahead of things because there's no way of knowing that it will ever lead to a marriage. But I think that the even scenes, where where you see a family dinner or that type of thing, I think that will be kind of a fun scene.
Hmm.
Something I look forward to. And I am
Um,
sensitive. I know a lot of people. Those scenes are going to be tough to watch. I realize that, but
but
for a lot of Nathan fans, it will be exciting.
it will. It's something that they had hoped for, had some of them
Mhm.
had stopped watching, and now they're back because of it. Um, I wanted to see Jenny is someone who's agreeing with you with that, and she's very excited about Nathan or looking forward to the Nathan and Elizabeth storyline. And what do you think? Do you think, Brian, that they'll go, as it took such a long time for her to even in the past, like allow to hold hands or whatever? Do you think we'll get a kiss from the two of them in this season?
I do.
Yeah,
I
you
do.
think you will?
I don't think it will be in the first, maybe not even the first half of the season, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it will happen before the
It'll
season's over.
happen.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is funny. And I was going to mention this. Why isn't Hallmark showing well in the USA any trailers? Good TV in Australia is giving all the feels. That's true. We're getting really good like trailers and promos from anything that we've gotten that I loved was from Australia, right? Did you see them?
Well, I did, and I have a theory about that. That
I want to
I
hear it.
think that maybe Hallmark is trying to be, you know, because Aaron is the star of the show, the
Right?
main the main character. The previews and promos, and not just for this season, but every season that preceded this season,
Mm-hmm.
she was kind of the focal point of those previews,
Yeah.
the trailers. So so this year, you know that's going to be a big part of her story, her journey this season, and these previews that we're seeing are kind of heavy on that story, and
Mm-hmm.
we've seen glimpses of the other characters, but we're not really getting a good feel for what those other character stories are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that maybe Hallmark is waiting that kind of giving the Lucas fans, the Luca Beth fans, a little bit more time before they're kind of confronted with this. And once we get closer to the premiere, they'll have interviews and other things, and
Mm-hmm.
the other cast members will be able to talk about their character, their character's
A little bit more.
journey, and it
Yeah.
will be a little bit more balanced, so fans that are that love the show and will watch and they're interested in all the characters, but they primarily want to know about their favorite character, whoever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be more opportunities then, for you know getting more information about what their favorite character will be doing and what their journey will be like for season 11. So that's
That's a
my
good
theory,
theory.
is that maybe they're trying to downplay some of that, just a little
Being
bit.
sensitive. It could be.
But
I think they've
but
heard so much. Yeah.
yeah.
So, I had put this, posted this. I out. This is coming from. They released the first four. Like in a press packet, they released like the first four synopsis of what the show is going to be.
Mhm.
And one of the things that they said was in episode 4 that someone from Lucas's past it didn't say if it was a male or female. You have any ideas? And I was asking people out here. A lot of people think it's going to be, I guess, Jeanette. Wouldn't we all love that because we hear about her all the time? But who do you think would be coming up from his past?
Oh, I believe it is Jeanette. And
Okay.
if I was a betting person, I would
Yeah.
I would gladly make that wager. I
Okay.
think that we I think that we're going to see her, and I think that it will be it won't just be like a cameo. I think she'll have an arc in the season. I really believe that. I I don't necessarily think that they'll become a romantic couple. Could be,
Hmm.
but but I think that the that's going to be a very exciting story. Not only to fill in some blanks from previous seasons, about his past, but I think that it will roll in well with his new story, as governor, and
Hmm.
and of course we still need answers as to you know who attacked him, what exactly happened, and who else might have been involved, and maybe she'll be coming to help figure that out, or who knows.
Yeah, that's true. Chris had said, was he with us? I forget where he said this. Chris had said that, I don't know if you caught this. When they originally films the end of season 10, you knew exactly who caused his accident. And
Mhm.
they cut it. He didn't realize that they made it a cliffhanger. He didn't realize it until it went to production and it aired, because they knew, and they did the whole thing, so they cut it off. And so I feel like we'll find out right away,
Yeah,
maybe, unless they chose to change that, you know. So
yeah.
go ahead.
I think it's Bernhard Montague
Yeah,
is
yeah,
probably responsible. He's the most logical one, but they may throw us a curveball, and
yeah,
I've heard rumors that they might be bringing back other characters from the past that
yeah.
might have some axe to grind with him, but I think that they want to do a better job of tying up some of those loose ends from season 10. So
Yeah.
if it ends up being Montague, that would be a way to do that. And and I think that another potential storyline for season 11 that I'm looking forward to is a partnership between Rosemary and Bill.
I was going to ask you
And
about
I,
that.
I
Who do
think
you think that is?
I think that when Nathan comes back from his investigation that I guess has been closed, I would assume that it has to do with Montague and the Union City Holdings.
Oh,
And
okay, okay.
and in the clip, he's not buying that whatever they came up with, and neither will Bill and Rosemary. And I think that they will be doing some investigating on there.
Hmm.
And I think
And
that
I had.
I think that's going to be humorous and
Mhm.
entertaining.
Well, I love it because one of my favorite scenes. Well, I love Rosemary. I love Rosemary and Lee. I love them, love them, love them. I've loved them forever, and I love Rosemary. And I know some people were mad at how they made Rosemary's character last year, but it's very much Rosemary. I don't think she went backwards. She was telling what was in her heart, and the thought of her losing her friend and her friend not being her neighbor, which is so silly. If you lived across the way and I could see you across the field, it's not like you're that far away, but whatever. People got upset. But
Right.
to me, Rosemary, that's Rosemary. I love her flaws and all. I feel like she's extremely human, you know? But when my favorite scene is when she's taking the photograph of all the people that are on the town council, right? And they're all running in to hurry up and take this photograph. And she's going, hey, and she's like getting all, and Bill's like, says to Lee, these aren't his exact words, but like, really, like, will you do something to Lee? And Lee's like, Rosemary,
Mhm.
she's like, okay. So Bill is like, gets annoyed by her. And it's going to be great. It's going to be great. What a
Yeah.
great pairing. I know.
Yeah.
What
Yep.
about that beautiful little actress, that little baby girl who's playing Goldie? Have you seen her? She's
Mhm.
beautiful. Oh my
Yep.
gosh. She's a
Yep.
cutie patootie. I love her. Can't wait for that.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
um, what would Nathan be doing if Rosemary's working with Bill? Well, goodness gracious. All right. What do you think? You tell me. I have an idea. Go ahead.
Well, I think they're going to lean very heavily in, his story with Elizabeth. You know, the I
Hmm.
know some are that's the last thing some people want to hear,
Who cares?
but I think
Everybody has their
that,
time. Tell us.
that's just I think that the interviews that Kevin's done, he's kind of alluded to that, that's you know that's going to be the focus of his character, and that's why he commented that he still will have scenes with Jack as Bill,
Hmm.
but not as many, and that's part of the reason why they teamed Bill with Rosemary.
Okay.
Is
No.
normally Bill and Nathan would probably be working together to and do this investigation,
Hmm.
but but I one thing that I will throw out there too, in terms of Nathan, um, I don't think it's just going to be a just a romantic storyline with Elizabeth. I think that they both are going to be dealing with issues with their kids on
Yes.
there, and that they are going to lean on each other,
Yes.
to help deal with whatever's going on with their kids,
Yes. Yes.
and some of that has been teased as well, and I think that those will be compelling stories as well. You know, seeing the kids.
Oh, Brian, he'll get back in. While we're waiting for Brian, I have my own theory about Nathan and like someone here said, well, before I put that on, what would Nathan and to be doing if Rosemary is working with Bill? I was thinking that he would have other Mountie things. I like it when he has Mountie stuff to do and it doesn't take all season to resolve them. It's like guest appearances like they did with Jack on like one episode here and then it gets resolved all in that one episode. It doesn't just linger on. And I also you're okay. I was saying my theory about Rosemary and Bill. I was saying that Nathan, I like it when Jack he would have a long storyline through the season, but he would also
Mhm.
have a short, like all done in one episode. Someone came into town and he took care of it. I would like to see that for Nathan, where this could be a longer thing that Rosemary and Bill are working on. And because Nathan's other, instead of having a long term, his long term is going to be his relationship with his daughter and Elizabeth. Do you know what I mean? That whole
Mhm.
dynamic. So they're giving
Right.
that longer storyline to like Rosemary and Bill, which what a pairing. That's
Mhm.
got the makings
Yep.
for some really good storyline.
I
Um,
agree.
Jay Boers, I think it says, can Nathan investigate the accident if it didn't occur in Hope Valley? Hmm.
Well, that's a good question, but Lucas,
Yes.
is
Mm-hmm.
was still a resident of Hope Valley, which would
Mm-hmm.
be under Nathan's jurisdiction, so maybe from that context, he could, investigate outside the town
Mm-hmm.
limits of Hope Valley. So
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And Lucy's agreeing. She's saying Rosemary and Bill are hilarious. You know what? We've already been chatting about this for 49 minutes. 49 minutes. It's been that fast.
time flies when you talk about when calls to art.
I know. I there was something somewhere and they said, "What can you on the spot talk about for at least an hour?" And at the top of the list was When Calls the Heart. Harry Styles was in there somewhere too because I love Harry Styles. And people are like, "When Calls the Heart and Harry Styles?" I'm like, "Yeah." I know. Oh, okay. So, Brian, this has been lovely. I don't know if anyone has any questions for you, or is there anything you would like to talk about that I have not covered with you?
Well, I think we've covered everything pretty well. Just people watching. You know, I'm anxious to see what storylines people are looking forward to. I think that when you think of the wealth of characters that are on the show now, there's a lot
Hmm.
of possibilities there. You know, the you know, it's the show is much bigger than the three or four characters that are
Yes.
that
Yes.
grab all the headlines.
This looks good. This is going to be a fun storyline. Little Jack should be getting school age soon with Elizabeth being his teacher. That's probably going to open up stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And Kathy's saying, Brian, I hope you get to go to the Hardy family reunion. Yeah, someone's and oh wait, what's
Well, I hope we have one this year. That will mean that they'll be filming a season 12. So
yes.
I'm pretty confident that's going to happen. So
Yes. I think there would definitely be a season 12. I do. That's cute. Team Bill Mary. Bill and Rosemary, Bill Mary, because they're teaming up. That's so cute. That's funny. Oh, Lillian's there for Governor Bouchard. Oh, you know what, Gladys? Yes, the Canfields. I'm excited to see
mhm,
because we didn't really get to see much of them in this past season. And
right.
I remember they were going on some, economic adventures, and I wanted to see how that all comes together. Um,
Mhm,
it's going to be interesting. It's going to be it. We've got the whole Hickam and May storyline. You said you liked that
mhm,
pairing, right?
mhm. I do.
Okay.
Mhm. Yep.
Let's see.
And of course, I was a fan with. I thought there was possibilities for Nathan in May
Yeah,
in
so did
season
I.
9.
Mhm.
I you know and of course when that kind of fizzled and they seemed to be shifting gears to Faith.
Mhm.
I was a little skeptical of that, but I could see that too.
Mhm.
I think that and I guess the lesson for me is that the I think that the you can't imagine sometimes one character without the other. Like with Lee and Rosemary. Now you couldn't imagine either one of them with anybody else.
Mhm.
But I think that the and we've of course we've seen that with Elizabeth. She had an epic romance with Jack, and I
Mhm.
think that the even though I may have preferred Nathan, I you can't argue that that she had a storybook relationship with Lucas.
Mhm.
That was a beautiful thing. For and that what's happened doesn't change that. That still happened, and that I don't think anything is negating that. It's still a beautiful story to look back on. So I think that they're you know these kind of stories. You know I think with Lucas, if I were to make a prediction, I think that, and I know Chris on one of the shows kind of indicated that there might be some romantic sparks at some point in for his character in season 11.
Yeah.
And I don't think it will happen right away, but I think it will.
Yeah,
And and
somewhere along the line. I
and
think so.
and I think it, depending on who the character is and who the actor is playing him, we know from all of his movies that Chris is a great romantic lead.
He is.
And is he had a beautiful story with Elizabeth, and he'll have a beautiful story with somebody else, some new
Mhm.
character at some point.
He's that kind of a character too. His character is very
Oh
romantic
yeah,
guy.
yeah,
So, I mean,
exactly.
yeah. Um, this is interesting. Do you think they will ever have Angela recover her sight? What do you think, Brian?
That's a good question. That would be miraculous. It would be a feel good story for sure. But
Mhm.
I don't know. The show kind of treads a fine line between reality and fantasy. On a lot of
Yes.
things, and
Yes.
but that's a time in history where, the advances in medical treatments and stuff were, kind of happening fast and furious. So,
Hmm.
I think that would probably be a plausible storyline, that they could bring in some new, treatment or something that, where
Hmm.
that could happen. It would be a beautiful story.
It would. I kind of like her not getting her sight back because um it just shows that she lives a beautiful life even though she's
Mhm.
disabled. Do you know what I mean? Like there's
Yeah.
nothing stopping her. We saw her riding a bike with Robert, which was cool,
Well,
and
and she's an inspirational character
yes,
as a
yes,
blind person, and
yeah.
you know that's an important story to tell too. So
Mm-hmm.
we've
Yeah. Cindy says, I'd like to see Henry somehow involved with Lucas in his governorship. He knows a lot of people. I don't know if
yeah.
his
It sounds like the one that's going to be the most involved with him is Lee. Based
yeah,
on Lee's heart to Hearties on there, but he's Lucas is good friends with Henry, and I don't see any reason why that friendship won't continue. With Lucas as governor. I'm not sure if there'll be a role in government for Henry, and I'm not sure that would really be
yeah,
something that Henry would be receptive to.
right.
But but they'll continue to be friends. Yeah.
Yeah. Something definitely almost like it's like a confidant for him and he always has like good advice for
Yeah.
him. And I think that will continue. And that's a nice relationship. Sort of like what Bill and Nathan have together.
Right.
Like they are
Exactly.
confident. Yeah.
Mhm.
And I
Yeah.
loved it when Nathan would reach out to Bill over his romance with Madeline or Madeline and it was hilarious because he was so grumpy and I love Nathan's character. The funny things he'd say, it was like perfect comedic timing. I thought that was great. I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, this is interesting, and then we'll be wrapping it up here. LJ is saying, "Do you believe the hot springs return so Bill can stay healthy?" I don't think they get rid of it. Do you?
Well, some of the actors said that the hot springs won't go away, but they won't be prominently featured in
Okay,
season 11. Is
that's
what I've
and
heard.
okay, and I had on I hate to cover your face up, but I want to get to that one. Hold on.
Mhm.
I heard I didn't hear. I had the artist who did with like the did all the set designs and changed the look of the because of the fire damage that was in the Queen of Hearts and how they changed that. She came on and she talked a lot about how she built and made the springs. So they're really physically there.
Mhm.
And I would
Mhm.
think after all that they went through that we'll still see it, but like you said, not as
Right.
prominent as it was. Maybe it's just another
Right.
spot for someone to go.
Mhm.
Maybe because we need I know there's a log for Nathan and Elizabeth, but they need something better than a log. Okay. They need a space somewhere. Maybe they'll sneak off to the hot springs or something. That would be fun.
Mhm.
Um, look, this is funny. Not funny, this is nice. Um, Equa is saying, thank you, Brian, for your sincere analysis of the show and characters. And I love this cordial dialogue. Well, what are we going to do? Fight, you and
Well,
I?
thank you very much. Yep.
I know it was very nice. All right.
Yep.
Thank you so much. You will have to come back again. Maybe as we dive into season 11, we'll come back and we'll talk about what our feelings are.
Sure.
Putting you on the spot, but I'll drag you back.
I know and I don't want to spoil things. I know you're my friend Lillian's going to be a guest on the
Yes.
future show.
Yep.
So
She's coming.
I'm kind of hoping maybe when the season starts, Lillian and I can both
Yes.
come in and we'll you know Lillian will be championing Governor Bouchard, and
Richard.
and I'll be and I'll be the one discussing the blooming romance with between Nathan and Elizabeth.
The blended family part too, with
Well, yeah, well,
Allie and little LJ, right? Yes, 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 yes.
I don't think they're getting married though in season 11 though.
No, no, but they could still be
And
like, yeah. So
yeah,
I think
yeah, I think that we'll see them do some things as a kind of a blended family, and I think that that will be that will be heartwarming. I think
yes,
and it's a story that goes beyond those characters. It's something that the community that watches the show, there's a lot of blended families and stuff.
they
So
are.
that's a story that will resonate with people.
Yes, I'm total agreement with it, and I look forward to that. Actually, I look forward to happiness, and I'm tired of like pain and should like it was painful. It was painful to see the things that they made Elizabeth go through, and I remember Erin saying, "Elizabeth, wow, she really goes through it." She said that in one of her interviews, and I was like, "You weren't joking, girl. You really did." Like, but Erin can pull off emotion like nobody. She's very good, very believable. And it'll be fun. It'll be fun to have
Yeah.
Lillian's coming on. I think it's April Fool's Day. She'll be on. But next week I have Deb Johnston coming on, and she is the admin to one of the When Calls the Heart fan pages. I mean, they are huge. Forget how many are on there. 50, 60,000 people. This is huge. So she's going to be coming
Mhm.
on, talk about all the things that she loves. And then we're having someone, her name is Nikki, and she's coming on. I found her on Twitter, and she always has these detailed, insightful, and I'm like, oh, I never thought to look at it that way. So I'm excited for her to share what she thinks too. But
Mhm.
this has been nice. Thank you. We'll say
Yeah,
goodbye to everyone.
a lot
Say
of fun.
goodbye to your
Thanks for having
fans.
me.
And then
Good night,
we
everybody.
will say goodnight together too. All right. Bye, friends. Bye, Hearties. See you next Monday.